Right, here we go again. Faster than the eye can see. Uh, Once, when I was 11, I went with my mother and her friend on some mission of mercy across the river in Virginia. They were very short on details, although I did overhear that she took up with another woman. When I got there, they said to go out to. They said to play outside. There was a hayfield that sloped down to the road. I didn't know the other kids, so partly out of shyness, I took off running down through the hayfield, which was almost chest high. As a kid, I objected to the idea that there was such a thing as faster than the eye can see. Things might get a bit blurry for a sec, but the notion that there could be significant gaps bothered me. The last thing I remember was seeing a single strand of a low electric fence and one of the steel posts. It was not on my mind now as I stood looking at a wall of brown material that stretched in both directions. Everything was still. I had no idea where I was. I looked up. There was the sky and the hay, and more importantly, the electric fence wire. I'd hit the wire right at my hips and flipped over, not faster than the eye can see, but certainly faster than the body can record, and then deposited on my feet in a trench more than 5 feet deep. I had no memory of any of that. I didn't know what I was looking at. No light, no color, a wall that stretched in both directions out of sight. I don't remember getting out. I think I have been associating to that because of the way life can serve up calamities so sudden and complete and executed so swiftly that you miss the crash and burn phase and land on your feet. The crash and burn phase. Uh, my, my friend had his father had a chemical company, and they had supplied the chemicals for the Boston whaler, which didn't look like the boat there, but you'll see. I don't know. Anyway, Bob Truesdale had the prototype, or rather, one of the first test boats of the Boston whaler. His father sold chemicals and was a supplier for the project, so he got this boat that had been dropped on rocks and tortured in all sorts of ways and gave it to Bob. And it didn't look that worse to wear, but it was no frills. The seats were just planks that sat in a groove inside the gunwale. So being 14, we had to apply our own tests. The first was to uh, take it from the river out in the ocean on days when there were rollers, nice big round top waves spaced yards apart, maybe 20 yards or so. The drill was to take off on one, which had the effect of disassembling the boat, now airborne, from, in order, the gas tank, the seats, and then the passengers, like an exploded drawing, skip over the trough, and reassemble before the crest of the following wave. That went well, so we went on to the next. It was Bob's idea that we go full throttle onto the beach just to see what would happen. You never know because the boat stopped so suddenly it created a lost time experience, a gap. We'd hit, and the next thing our consciousness could record was the loud noise of the engine still at full throttle while we did several somersaults before coming to rest and staggered back to turn it down, completely painless and idiotic. Whalers are also unsinkable, common now, but this was in 1961, the early days of fiberglass sandwiches of flotation foam. We did the beach thing enough times to find the limit of the bottom part of the sandwich, which detached of a piece, not enough to separate completely, but enough to let a bunch of water in the interior of the sandwich. This put us so low to water that any effort to get underway brought more water over the side until there was only an inch or two of freeboard. So this was the unplanned, official, unsinkable part of the test. It passed. It didn't sink exactly, but it wasn't made to transport a full load of water when the load was below the surface of the water. At full throttle, we inched across the harbor for an hour, a trip that should have taken a minute or two at the most. End of summer crazies writ large. Slightly superfluous. Uh, There on rainy days we go to Fall River to the movies. Then at the end of summer, Fall River meant going to the mills for back to school shopping, the heavy old fashioned clothes that I never saw in any store. Thick gray flannel pants, coarse and itchy, dark gray corduroy pants with flecks of lighter gray and a few red specks, which I suspected were floor sweepings gathered by the pitiful child laborers. These imaginings were fueled by the inevitable Dickens work of misery we were assigned to put a damper on all that summer fun. Didn't help the looks across a gulf we got from the ghostly people working there. Oh, sorry. Oh my God. That means I should plug in my computer. Um, Hang on. Oh, right. Uh, those old brick factories were grim. Summer reading usually included some Charles Dickens tomes, so we developed a paid by the word, fulsome writing style and wrote things like that which not, and not entirely unkindly, and other double negatives. They say he did a lot of good bringing the conditions of children that children had to endure to light. I didn't care. As an adoptee, it was one long slog and being re traumatized. Oh, oh, yeah. I hated that guy. He was taking advantage of orphans and stuff. Orphans and stuff. Now that's a slight exaggeration. There weren't any there weren't any child laborers there, but it was a grim crew Fall River in general was just like, oh my goodness, under some kind of shadow and a cloud. In 2 weeks, it took to close up the summer house, drive to Washington, go to the dentist, go to the doctor, and fly back to Providence for school. The weather had turned cold. One year it snowed on October 10th. Seemed like a cruel trick to emphasize that there was no relief in sight until June, also known as the beginning of what had just gotten crushed. I still get tense around Labor Day, fearful of the Dragoon Squad itching to drag me to the airport. True. Um, this is the redoubtable. It got cropped. Well, too bad. DC-3 was the preferred way to get there. Uh, Douglas DC-3. Still flying some places. Uh, this section is over Connecticut, 1962. This is me flying back home at Christmas. I don't know. Over Connecticut, 1962. A copy of Time magazine that I had been reading slipped from my hands, fell partway to the floor, and then hesitated as if it might change its mind and float back up. Behind me, there was a commotion. The stewardess gave a short, full, businesslike scream. I turned in time to see her simply throw a passenger who she grabbed from the loop into his seat. He was still pulling up his pants. Never good if the staff starts screaming, I thought. And so this is a power dive. The sensation was of being pulled down much faster than a fall. What set this chain of events in motion was a terrific noise, so loud it blotted out everything but the scream, and so loud it was hard to tell where it was coming from. Later, I would say it was like, as if a giant was taking a power saw to the back of the plane. The stewardess strapped herself in. We were pitched almost straight down. We were making so much progress. We weren't loose in our seats like on a roller coaster, but pressed in, accelerating. I began to wonder how much room there was to the ground. We started at only 10,000 feet, so there was no announcement. Was this the aeronautical equivalent of the accelerator getting stuck to the floor? Out the window, you could see individual trees come into view. Well, I've had a nice life, I thought. I was 14, a little surprised how calm and accepting I was. I wasn't positive we were going to drill into the ground, but then nobody said we weren't. And there was that scream. She was sitting right in back across from me, wide-eyed, silent. The noise lessened, and just when we were thinking this is definitely not good, we pulled out and started trundling along at 500 feet, as if nothing was the matter. This seemed comically low after all the aerobatics. Finally, the pilot came on the horn and explained that the seal on the rear door had broken and that we were going to continue to Washington at 1,500 feet. No bowing and scraping, no sorry, I was scared, speechless. I mean, too busy to tell you, hey, I'm still driving this thing. I meant to go into a power dive. It was then that I remembered that the week before, one of their planes had lost the seal on the rear door and it blew off at 10,000 feet, and a stewardess was sucked out by the decompression. I always see the floating magazine when I recall this incident, the semi-zero G condition that lend itself to detachment and a going to ground in the present, suspense and odd, undramatic, I've had a good life. I didn't know it was going to be years and years before I felt stationed here and life was to cling to. All right. Oh my goodness.